الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنام وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. إننا نتعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير والحث والتمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله ابتغاء مرضات الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise it's worthy of an exalted, beneficent bestower of bounties, the most beneficent, the most glorious subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask our Lord most high and exalted to send copious and unlimited blessings and salutations upon our beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, and we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we learn and teach, and we pay our respects to the elders past and present. So if we continue inshallah azza wa jalla in the book of intentions, we'll continue as we always do inshallah with the Arabic. رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم. قال المؤلف, he says, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه يقول الله تعالى يوم القيامة أين المتحابون بجلال اليوم أذلهم في ذلي حيث لا ذل إلا ذله. وقال أبو طالب رحمه الله تعالى معنى جلالي أي إجلالا لي وتعظيما، أي تعاونوا على طاعتي وتألفوا على محبتي وتحابوا من أجلي وإنما ذلك لأنني أحب ذلك وقد عظمت وأجللت فعله. So if you look in this, you put in the text up. So for those watching on the on Facebook, it's there, and for those who are here, it's page 61 of this text and the PDF. 53 on the PDF. Whoever's got the PDF. So he says there, in the middle of the page, a bit lower than the middle, he says it was narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The author says, may Allah be pleased with him and pleased with you. May Allah benefit us from him and from you. It was narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu that Allah Azza wa Jalla will proclaim on the day of judgment, where are those who love each other bijalali, out of regard for my majesty? Today I will give them shelter in my shade when there is no shade other than my shade. And Abu Talib, that's Abu Talib al-Makki, rahimahullah, he says, he's one of the scholars, he says the meaning of bijalali is to love each other, witnessing my greatness and majesty, meaning to cooperate in my obedience, to be in harmony with each other in my love, and love each other for my sake. And that is only because that is what I love, and I have magnified and exalted its implementation. So the intention, it's a bit funny the way it's structured. Really kind of what he's saying is, if you look at the 8th intention on page 62, he says, intend to meet a brother or a sister for the sake of Allah so that you may benefit him in this life and he can intercede with Allah on your behalf after your death. So it's just the way scholars, when they write things, you know, they generally, these kind of scholars, they're not following a text and they're not just writing from what Allah opens up upon them. And so he started off talking about the intention of going to the masjid to get ilm and to sit in the gatherings of ilm and remembrance, the gatherings of knowledge and remembrance of Allah. Then he goes in the same intention, he's talking about love. So for us, we like things compartmentalized, 1A, 1B, 1B, Roman numeral 1. We like things like that. So it's kind of like 7.5, really, intention 7.5. So that it's a change of topic. And so he says that Abu Hurairah who says that on the day of judgment, Allah Azza wa Jalla will make a proclamation. In other words, it will be known to all who are there. That's when someone proclaims, they used to have the town crier back in the days, the English, and he would ring the bell and say, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, whatever, and then make an announcement. The mayor said, the king said, so-and-so said. So that's a proclamation. They don't really have proclamations these days. They just have posts, don't they?
I think when the prince was born,
yeah, ring the bell. Yeah, but it was on social media, so there's no need to hear the bell. Everything's it's all different these days. So Allah Azza wa Jal will proclaim, and when Allah Azza wa Jal proclaims, then everyone hears. And the proclamation is, he says to all the khalaiq, all the creations, and all the human beings and jinns, he says, where are those who love each other bijalali, out of regard for my majesty? So where are those who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In other words, not seeking to, why some people, why they're friends with so-and-so? Because they're attractive and they attract attractive people. Someone's got a car, or someone's someone's wealthy, or someone's got connections in something, or someone's an athlete, or someone's popular, or people hang out with each other, or because they've got no other options. Some people, unfortunately, they can only hang at a particular gathering because no one else will accept them in another gathering. So people associate with one another and congregate with one another for a lot of different reasons. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the ones who love each other for my sake, bijalali. In other words, he says it's from the majesty of Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so happy that He puts that love that the two people have for Allah in that section of jalal, of majesty, of grandiosity, of making something huge and making something significant. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, today I will give them shelter in my shade when there is no shade other than my shade. So that's on the Day of Judgment. How far is the sun away on the Day of Judgment? It's like there. Yeah, it's very close. And what's happening to the people on the Day of Judgment? Up to where? Yeah, some up to their ankles, some their knees, some their hips, some their chests, some their necks, some their foreheads, and some they're sweating so much it's above their heads. It's an extraordinarily hot day. And the only place that there's shade on that day, he says, where there is no shade other than my shade. For what? For loving another person for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bi jalali. And then Abu Talib al-Makki, he's one of them, mashallah. They say that the book of Imam al-Ghazali, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, was taken from his book Qut al-Qulub. So he's a very respected scholar. He says the meaning of bijalali, in other words, out of regard from my majesty, and then subhanallah, the translator, barakallahu fi, nafa'na bihi, after he says out of regard from my majesty, he puts a question mark, because it's a difficult thing to translate even into Arabic, to express and interpret. Bijalali, jalal Allah. Who knows what jalal Allah is? Who knows what the majesty of Allah Azza wa Jal is like? Inshallah, one day we will know, but in this world, it's a very khas, and it's a very specific thing that only very, very select people may know. And then if they do know in this world, maybe they don't get the full understanding of what it means to be associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty, or Jalal subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says it's to love each other, he says, witnessing my greatness and majesty. That's the ta'zeem of Allah. That's the azamah of Allah. And to be in harmony with each other in my love, and love each other for my sake. So, harmony in what? Harmony in what's halal and what's haram. What Allah likes and what Allah dislikes. Harmony in dealing with others. Harmony in dealing with inanimate objects. Harmony in dealing with the ecosystem. Harmony in dealing with oneself also. And that is only because that is what I love. That's why Allah Azza wa Jalla has elevated that deed. He's elevated the deed of loving someone for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bi jalali, because that's what Allah loves. And I've magnified and exalted its implementation. And Allah Azza wa Jal, it's not an easy thing to love someone. It's not an easy thing because we're fickle. And the heart, the word in Arabic for heart is qalb. Qalb means yataqallab. Qalb means to flip-flop. Really, it should be called not the heart, the flip-flop. One day like this, one day, depending on what. Why do we sometimes like something and hate something? The same thing, one day we hate it, the same thing the next day we don't like it, we love it. Why? Yeah, nafs, our moods, our emotions, our states, our sleep, the basic necessities of food, what's happened to us during the day, what other things we've got in our minds. Sometimes we just don't have time for someone else or something else. It's just the way we are. So imagine loving someone to that level, another person, for the sake of Allah, and not for selfish means, again, because really the scholars say there's two reasons why people love. There's two reasons. Either they get a benefit from that thing that's loved, or that person that's loved, they get a benefit. They love their mum because their mum makes them food, cleans their house, whatever, looks after them, cuddles them, whatever else it is. Okay? Or they love something because it's attractive, because they see beauty in it, whether it's physical beauty, or whether it's personality, or whether it's generosity. There's some quality they like in that thing or that person. So in a sense, love is selfish. When we love someone, we're really loving for our own benefit. We're really getting the benefit out of that person, either by getting the benefit out of what they do and how they are, or getting a benefit of what they do or how they are, because we get some sort of istimta'. We get happy that we see something attractive or we're attracted to that person in some way, shape or form. But Allah Azza wa Jalla is talking about a love that's over and above that. It's not a love of a personal nature. It's not a love that's intrinsically attached to the individual. It's not a subjective love that's attached to that person. It's an objective love which is attached to Jalali, subhanahu wa ta'ala, His glory and His majesty. It's attached to that level. That's the attachment that they have. Right? And so because of that, He's magnified it and He's exalted it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He goes on and He says, وقال صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تحابوا في الله وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا فإن من أخا في الله رفعه الله درجة لا ينالها شيء من عمله بشيء. Whatever. Okay, he says that the Prophet said عليه الصلاة والسلام on the top of page 62 in this text, he says the Prophet said عليه الصلاة والسلام, love each other for the sake of Allah and be servants of Allah in brotherhood. Whoever takes someone as a brother for the sake of Allah, Allah will raise him to a degree that cannot be reached by any of his other actions. It's a pretty poignant, deep meaning hadith. And especially for us first world people, what are we concerned about mainly?
Me.
Ourselves. Mainly it's all about me. My this, my that. It's It's the silly season as they call it now, and everyone's got to buy. The traffic's insane. Everyone's going nuts. Everyone's got to buy the things. It's the commercialized celebration of Isa alayhi salam, of Jesus, but it has really not much to do with Jesus anymore. It's more about people buying things and making each other selfish. It's a selfish occasion. Eat as much as you can and buy presents and take time off, and if you're involved drinking of alcohol and illicit substances, and then a little bit later there's the New Year, which everyone just goes nuts, and it's the time coming up. And then yet Allah Azza wa Jalla is talking about something different. He's saying that love each other for the sake of Allah. In other words, don't love that which you love for yourself. Love that which Allah loves. Love that which Allah Azza wa Jalla loves. And Allah loves that we love each other. Like, think in our faith, how many times have you heard that? How many times on wherever it's been, on social media, wherever you've heard about or you hear about Islam and our faith, how many times have you heard that's to Allah Azza wa Jal such a fundamental and beloved thing that the person who loves for somebody else's sake, Allah elevates that person's status that in a way that no other deed they do. And what do we hear about Islam? Oh, it's fighting and killing. We think that gets us close to Allah. We think that gets us That's not what Allah's saying in this. This is what the Prophet's saying, alayhi salatu wassalam. He's saying love. He's saying love. Be servants of Allah in brotherhood. And whoever takes someone as a brother for the sake of Allah, Allah will raise that person to a degree. It doesn't matter what other deeds. So no other deeds can match that. And then he says, is that clear? Is it this hard or easy? Is it just natural? Like are we lovers like that? We're not fighters, or something else going on? He says, وقال عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه ما أعطى عبد بعد الإسلام خيرا من أخ صالح وقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم من أراد الله به خيرا رزقه خليلا صالحا إن نسي ذكره وإن ذكر أعانه. Says Umar ibn al-Khattab, Allah anhu, he's al-Faruq, he's the second Khalifa after the Prophet of Allah. He said, after Islam, so that a servant of Allah is not given anything better than a righteous brother or sister. So the best thing to get is deen. After deen, right, what's the best thing to have? A righteous brother. Who is the righteous brother of the Prophet of Allah? Right, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Allah anhu. Who bring Sayyidina Abu Bakr into Islam? Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? So not only did he bring him into Islam, Rabbahu ala al-Islam. He raised him and nurtured him to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then It's in the hadith, it said that if someone was looking for the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, they couldn't find him, they'd go and find Abu Bakr. And then the Prophet said that if the iman of Abu Bakr was in the scale, and the iman of everyone else, every other believer, was in another pan of the scale, the iman of Abu Bakr is heavier and weightier. So that's the ukhuwa fillah, that's that brotherhood, that sisterhood in Allah Azza wa Jal. Those bonds that when they're forged, when they're made, they can't be broken if they're truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we have friends for any other reason other than that, then they don't last long generally. We just change for a flip-flop. That's what the heart does. Like that person, they did this for us, we did that for them. But then they did something we didn't like. And because they did something that we didn't like, we want to bar them. That's it. They're out. They're gone. We're not friends with them anymore. Whatever the case might be. So, but whoever takes a friend for Allah Azza wa Jalla that's sincere in that regard, he says that's the best thing. And then the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever Allah wants good for. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for someone, what does He do for that person? He'll provide him with a righteous companion, a friend who is righteous, who's close to Allah, that if that person forgets, that her friend reminds her. And when she remembers, her friend assists her. Her friend assists her. So when she remembers something, so when she forgets to do something for Allah, that friend reminds her, oh look, don't forget to do this, don't forget tomorrow's, this date and Ashura or Eid Mawlid, dhikr Mawlid Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, or whatever it is. Tomorrow don't forget to fast, don't forget to do this, give zakat, whatever, give sadaqah. Oh look, there's this appeal going on, be a part of it, there's this, there's that, this, if they forget. Right? Then if they do remember, oh look, I want to give some money for the bushfire appeal. Oh, here's $20. Here, put that in the pile. Oh, look, I need to go and study. I'll look after your kids for you. Whatever the case might be. Whatever the case might be. And that's why we mentioned the example of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Allahumma rada anhu. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he brought him into Islam and he reared him in Islam. So he's close to Allah, and then he would be always seen with him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. And then he says, Thabit al-Bannani, he says, رضي الله تعالى عنه, ونحن وقوف بجبل عرفة إذ أقبل شابان عليهما عباء القطوان فقال أحدهما للآخر يا حبيب فأجابه الآخر لبيك يا محب. He said, قال ألا ترى الذي تحابين فيه وتواددنا له يعذبنا فسمعت صوتا وهو يقول نعم ليس يفعل ذلك. So he says Thabit al-Bannani said that we were once standing in the plains of Arafah, on the mountains of Arafah, when two youths wearing qitwani, and qitwani is a place in Kufa in Iraq known for the garments, so they're wearing garments that relate to that area, and they approached us. One of them said to the other, "Oh dear friend, but Habib is more than that. Habib is beloved. Oh beloved to me." Right? He said, and the other answered him, "Oh beloved, I'm at your service, labbaika." That what do you want? What is it that you need? I'm here for you. Whatever it is that you need, I'm here for you. Don't sweat it. And the other, do you not think that the one for whom we love each other and become fond of one another will punish us? Then he heard a voice say, this is Thabit al-Bannani, in other words, a voice from the sky or a voice from the unknown. In other words, Allah Azza wa Jal is answering their question. He says, I heard a voice say, surely he will not. For what? What did they do? Because they loved each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are elevated. Is it Maghrib? Oh, beautiful. All right. So when we look at us as believers, and when we see our situation, and when we see the difficulties that we face, in reality, the essence of it, what did the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam say? He says, Allah says in the Quran, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that they give from what they have to others, even if they're in need of that thing. And unfortunately, we've lost that. Unfortunately, as a ummah, we've lost that. As a people, we've lost that. Unfortunately, as a faith in Allah Azza wa Jal, we've lost that. And we've just become selfish, unfortunately. And selfishness is the way of shaitan. There's only two ways. There's either the prophetic way or there's the shaitani way. There's no third way. I know that's not what we're told. I know that's not what we hear every single day. But that's the reality. There's only two paths. In the next life, is there like Jannah, is there paradise and hellfire and like another place where you can just chill out for a while, or that's it? Okay, in Christianity, they can work that out themselves. Good luck. You know, as Muslims, is there a third place? There's only two. It's either with Allah or against Allah, or with Allah and not with Allah. And not with Allah is against Allah. That's the only options that are available to humankind. And that's what shaitan, he chose his own way. He didn't choose the way of Allah when he says, وَقَعُ لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, go into prostration for Sayyidina Adam. He refused. أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ. He refused, and not only did he refuse, but he became proud and arrogant. And so that's what happens when Allah deviate from what Allah has engendered as part of the way we lead our lives. In other words, the prophetic tradition. When we go away from that, we're actually saying that we're better than the Prophet of Allah. That's what we're actually saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that selfishness that's come part and parcel of who we are, whether we think it affects us to 0.01% or 99.9%, it affects us. There's no doubt. That's just the nature of the society in which we live in. It's the nature of the overwhelming, pervasive theory on earth, philosophy on earth these days, which is consumerism, which is materialism, which is just having more, and that's what matters. The only thing that matters is having more, and the best, and the latest, and whatever else it is. And so, because that's the case, when we have our goal as the ephemeral or just the worldly things, then we got no room. There's no room for our hearts anymore, and there's no room to love anymore. The only type of love that's ever spoken about is love between a woman and a man, and other types of romantic loves. Right? So that's intimate things. That's the only time you ever hear the word. Love for our fellow human beings is not mentioned. Oh, now, alhamdulillah, it's coming Christmas, so we'll mention it for a week or two. There'll be some nice shows on TV and some nice things that remind us that we're human beings. And then after that, we'll go back to being non-human beings, shayateen. Because the musrifeen, the consumers, this is what Allah says. Those who consume and waste, they are the brothers of the shaitans. Which the brother of the shaitan is what? The brother of a mule is what? A mule. The brother of a canary is a canary. The brother of the shaitan is a shaitan. Right? So that's the ananiya. Right? That's the ananiya, that me, ana, me. It's all about me. It's all about me, ana, individuals, me and I and me and myself. When A'udhu Billah Azza wa Jal, how can a person who's so self-interested ever love? And then we wonder why the divorce rate, is 50% plus. Even amongst the Muslims, it's 37% plus. We wonder why people can't get along. We wonder why people are unfriending each other. Wondering why the conflicts are going on in the world. We're wondering why. Why is all these conflicts? Why is protests and you're not allowed to protest and whatever. If you truly love somebody, and you know they like chocolate pudding, would you get them the chocolate pudding? If there was a chocolate pudding in the fridge and you felt like something sweet, would you eat it? What, you would? Oh, okay. Most of them. Right? No one's saying anything, so I've got to pick on someone.
What was the question again?
Someone like chocolate pudding that you love. Someone you love somebody. Genuinely love them, not for yourself, but for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Bijalali is Allah Azza wa Jal. And that pudding or whatever is in the fridge, would you eat it or not?
Yeah, of course not.
So someone's saying they would under their... Right. We wouldn't, okay? What will we do for the person that we truly love for the sake of Allah? What will we do for that person in terms of their rights?
Give up some of your own rights.
We'd fulfill it. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خِصَاصًا. We would give up that which we need for that person who we love. And if you look at it, It's that motherly instinct. The mothers give up for their children, their sleep, their food, their strength, their power, everything they possibly have. They used to. Now it's not as much because it's all about me. You see it every day. Every time you walk past a cafe, every time you walk past a shop, every time you see someone in a car, you see what the lady looks like and you see what the kids are doing. And don't worry about the dad, he's not even there at all. So forget about him. He's doing his own thing with the boys, whatever he's doing. That's even if he's around. Of course, I'm generalizing to make a point. The point is that when someone truly loves for the sake of Allah, they'll fulfill the right of the other. Imagine if we have a society where everyone is looking to fulfill everyone else's right. In other words, everyone's looking to fulfill their own obligations. They don't need to be told, they don't need a law, they don't need police, they don't need this, they don't need that. I forget what it is now. In Shibam, in Yemen, there was a Qadi, and he was there. He came from another area. Qadi is an Islamic judge, and there was an Islamic court there, and he was there. He came from another area. 12 years, no one came. 12 years, I think it was 22 years coming. No one came. There was no mutakhasiman. There were no adversarial trials going on. There was no one, claiming that someone stole, someone took, someone ate, someone 20. And then he said, like, came to the imam of the mosque and said, I'm earning money and I don't even do anything all day. All I'm doing is reading and researching. And he said, as long as you're doing the right thing, it's halal. Then one day a situation came. A man bought land from another man, and the man who purchased found a kanaz, a buried treasure there. And so he went to the man who sold him the land and said, this is yours. I bought the land, I didn't buy the treasure. And the man, the solder, said, I sold you the land and everything on it. It's not my buried treasure. And they kept on. That was the takhasum. That was the point of conflict. And so finally they went to the qadi. They went to the judge, and they said, look, the one who purchased the land said, look, I found this treasure, this buried treasure in the gold and jewels and rubies and diamonds or whatever. And it's not. I didn't buy that. That's not part of the contract of sale. That's something else. And the guy that sold the land, the vendor, he said to the purchaser, he said to the qadi, well, I sold the land and everything. I don't know what's there. Whatever's in it, it's his. Good luck to him. And then each one wanted to give it up, and they couldn't give it up. So then in those days, things were, of course, a lot different than today. He said to the purchaser, do you have any sons or daughters? And he said, yeah. He said, do you have any sons or daughters to the vendor? He said, yeah. He said, all right, if they're of marriageable age, marry your daughters and your sons to each other, give it to them, and they can raise a family, and it can go from there. So that's what love breeds. Love for Allah, not selfish love. Because as we said, it's defined as two things, love. Because we get a benefit from someone or something. Let's talk about someone at this stage. Or someone's beautiful, someone's attractive, so we love that person. Or they've got attractive qualities, they're generous, or they're intelligent, or whatever turns you on, as they say. Whatever tickles your fancy, that thing is the thing that attracts that person to that person. Right? But when we talk about love for Allah, it's about fulfilling the rights of the individual in accordance with what Allah has given. That means the rights of another human being. That means the rights of the jinns. That means the rights of the Muslims. It means the rights of the non-Muslims. It means the rights of your family, your relatives, your mum and your father and your brother and your sister and your cousins, your uncles and your aunties, your grandmother, whatever, grandfather, all that. It means the rights of your spouse. Imagine if two people got married for that reason. If two people got married, of course they're attracted to each other. Of course everyone's happy in that regard. But they did it for the sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ marry for deen. How would their life be? How would their existence be? How often would they come into conflict? And if they did, how would they deal with it? Right? And then to love the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, the stray dogs, and the cats and other things. How would our world be if we truly loved for the sake of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? Bi Jalalillah Azza wa Jal. There wouldn't be conflict. There'd be conflict like these two people that the vendor and the purchaser that bought that land, and we'd be looking to give rights. We'd be looking to fulfill our obligations to others. We wouldn't need laws. We wouldn't need police. We wouldn't need. But our world is what? The exact opposite of that. It is the exact opposite. tomorrow or Wednesday there's a rally to march and we seek these rights. Next week there's then there's this conference that we're always seeking our rights. It's the opposite of love. When we seek our right from someone else, it's sulb, it's taking away. Love is to give. Love is to nurture. Right? Bijalali, to engender in that individual that which is beneficial, not for me, but for that individual. Bijalali Allah Azza wa Jal, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. But to seek my right from that person is to take away love. And as a matter of fact, if I have this book and someone takes it away from me, am I going to feel love to the person that took it away from me? Even if it's by law. Not all laws are just. Am I going to feel love to that individual? Someone comes and demands. I've got demands. My demands are 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that going to increase the love between the hearts? It's the opposite. When someone is demanding, when someone forces, when someone uses enforcement, no one likes to deal with the police. Nobody, because they're the enforcers of the law. They come and they force you to do it. If you don't want to do it, they taser you or handcuff you or put you in a chokehold or whatever it is. Forcibly make sure that whatever the law is, to a certain level, of course, gets implemented. So no one likes that. No one can accept that because it's qahr. Qahr means out of one's will. It's not the will that we want. We're put into a position where we have to do it. So that's the essence of our faith. That's the essence of our faith. Because we're doing it because we love Allah Azza wa Jal so much. And when we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much, look, He says, I've got a special spot for you. If He's going to give you shade on the Day of Judgment, what's He going to give you here in this world? Which means nothing. That's the day that Allah Azza wa Jal is the most angry. That's the day that Allah Azza wa Jal's wrath is manifest. He's never been angry before that day, and He'll never be angrier after that day. That day Allah Azza wa Jal's wrath is manifest. And yet that day He says, look, I've got a special place for you. If you love for someone else, even Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, it's mentioned in Ihya al-Din of Imam al-Ghazali, Allah Azza wa Jal said to Musa, what have you done for me? To Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet Musa. Ya Allah, what do you mean? It's me. Because Musa and Allah Azza wa Jal have that kind of relationship. Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ma tilka bi yaminaka ya Musa. What's in your right hand, Moses? It's a bit like, like a uncle and astaghfirullah, like it's a bit easygoing relationship. Not that ta'zeem, that significance like with the Prophet of Allah, Sayyidina Rasulullah, right? So he says to him, Musa says, what do you mean, Ya Allah? I prayed and, I prayed to you. He says, that's for you. That'll be in your suhaf. And then he says, what did you do for me, Ya Musa? And then Musa says, I fasted. He said, that's a junnah. That's for you to protection on the Day of Judgment. What did you do for me, Ya Musa? He says, Ya Allah, I don't know what you mean. He says, who did you take who did you love for my sake and who did you hate for my sake? And Musa alayhi salam knew that was the best of all deeds. Musa alayhi salam knew that the best of all deeds was to love for the sake of Allah and to hate for the sake of Allah. Of course, the loving is the individual and the hating is the sin, not the sinner. If that makes sense. All right? Yeah, so we'll come back and we'll do some questions if you like. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it's time to pray, bi'idhnillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala khayril anam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi salam. So inshallah Azza wa Jal, the topic of love, as we said, it's a rarely mentioned topic amongst the believers and amongst the scholars and these days and in classes and in khutab and things like that. And unfortunately, it means that that's something that we're missing. We're missing greatly. And if we think to ourselves the relationships that we have, if we're constantly in a relationship, we're looking for our rights. We're on edge. We're on edge. We're constantly looking for where's my right? Is someone going to take my right? Am I going to be oppressed? Is someone not going to let me do that? And I have to tell you, the feeling that I get as a family lawyer and a sheikh that always deals with things, with people's marital situations. Unfortunately, that's what people are always looking for. People are always looking for their rights. What's my rights? What do I get out of this? Where do I sit? How come that why isn't it like this come in? Some people, they don't even like the Sharia. Why is the Sharia like that? It should be like this. The Sharia is wrong. And I've heard people actually say that. Muslims, that is. And of course, the complaints about the law, there's just go on any forum. You hear, non-stop complaints about the law. Why should the law be like this? And why should the children go there? And why should property be divided here? And why should... So, the thing that comes in your heart when you deal with a significant other, whether it's your mother, whether it's your brother, whether it's your sister, whether particularly about husbands and wives, that if the thing that comes in your heart when you deal with your spouse is, are they going to take my right? Are they going to oppress me? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Then unfortunately you don't love that person. That's the reality. You're not in love with that person. You don't really love them bijalalillah azza wa jal, for the sake of Allah. It's just convenience, or it's a selfish thing on that individual's part, that they find that person beautiful, or they've something attractive within that person, some quality, or they get some sort of benefit. They get that individual's getting a benefit, whether it's a house or whether it's intimacy or whether it's whatever it may be. And then of course those things that are based on worldly things, the world is coming to an end, whether we like it or not. It's going to finish. The material things in this world are going to end. And that's why when it comes to marriage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Min nafsin wahida." It doesn't say from one body. He says from one nafs, from one self, from one life Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And that's why we have soulmates, because our spouse came from, our significant other came from ourselves, or from Sayyidatuna Hawa, came from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And until we can overcome that, till we can be strong enough in our iman billah azza wa jal firstly, in our faith in Allah azza wa jal firstly, and secondly, in the love that we have with that individual, to put that to the side. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say when it comes to that? وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Don't forget the favors that are between you. Don't forget what that person did and this person did. For now to come and stand on, and say, no, you did this and that's it, whatever the case might be. So, unfortunately, it's pervasive, because it's become ananiya. It's about me, 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 it's about me all the time. And unless we're looking to give others their rights, we're looking to fulfill our obligations, we'll never truly love. How sad is that? How sad is that? That an individual that has everything afforded to them, available, lights at night, running water, hot water, cold water, roads, alhamdulillah, safety, no one's, hassling you on the streets, there's no army, police, you can gather pretty much, you can do all these things, right? And yet, the individual, the most base aspect of who we are, is to love that person is never loved. And how sad is that? How sad that a person is never loved. Never been in loved and never loved anybody else, let alone being loved themselves. And that it's across the board. It's across the board with our parents and whoever else and our family. There's an obligation there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions as well, your relatives and your family, you've got to be good with them. But that's not the love that's there. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the hadith that we read, it says tawaddu, which is the same word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses when he talks about marriage. He doesn't use the word hub. He uses وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Mawadda is hub, is love, is fleeting, it's only attached to the heart. One day we love, one day we don't love. Today we like, tomorrow we don't like. But mawadda, it's more encompassing. It means to be endeared to that person. And someone who's endeared to another individual, would they oppress them? Would they take their rights? It'd be the opposite. So really, if we look at what love is, they say if you love someone, set them free. Have you heard that statement before? Maybe you're not romantic enough then. But if you were romantic enough, you would have heard that statement. In other words, let them be. What about holding space for somebody? I'm sure you've heard that, which means let people develop at their own pace. Let people come to their own realizations at their own pace. Let them, in other words, create that environment, if you like, that allows them to flourish. And so that's what true love is. That's the reality of love, billah. Billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you want to know a'la darajat, the highest of love is love for the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu. That's it. If we really know if we want to love or not, what are we prepared to do for the Prophet? He said to the Sahaba, he said, I can't wait to meet my beloved. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, aren't we your beloved? I think we mentioned this last week even. I don't even know. Mahak? Yeah. So we don't have to go through it again. They said, you're my companions. There'll come a time when they won't hear me, they'll love me. Even they'll give everything they own. See how the Prophet mentions everything. Why do you say everything they own? Because we live in a materialistic world, in a consumer society. The true ones who are beloved to the Prophet of Allah would be willing to give everything just to see him in a dream. That's love. And they're the beloved to the Prophet of Allah. He loves us like we love him. Those people. Ya Allah ja'alna minhum, ya Rabb. Allah make us of those people, inshallah ta'ala. Bi-idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala karmi wa fadli. Right? That's the ultimate love. And it was manifest in the time of the Sahaba. Yeah, the lady came to the Prophet ﷺ. She said, she's going in a campaign. Ya Rasulullah, take my child. What? It's a little toddler, not a toddler, infant. Ya Rasulullah, take my child. What do you mean take your child? What am I going to do with your child? Ya Rasulullah, if you can't benefit from my child anyway, use my child as a shield so the arrows and the swords don't hit you. Who would do that? Who would do that? Today, if someone, a bit of corporal punishment to a child that's not theirs, whoa, they made a movie about it, didn't they? Many movies. We lose our minds because it's an extension, everything's an extension of ourselves. Even our children are just become extensions of ourselves. Who raises their child for Allah? Who says, I'm a caretaker of this child, I'm wali amr of this child, I'm the guardian of this child because this is Allah's Ayal Allah, the family of Allah. This is one of the family of Allah. No way. It's mine. He's got my name. He carries my name. Even sportsmen when they're fighting or when they're doing things, because it's valor and it's courage and power and all this. They say, no one's going to break my record, or maybe one of my sons will break my record. It's still connected to him because it's selfish. That's the world. That's the world we live in these days. It's the self. And so if we have to love the Prophet more than ourselves. We have to. We have to. If we're true believers, we have to love the Prophet more than ourselves, alayhi salatu wassalam. Again, another lady, when the Prophet was out in the campaign, they came back in groups and groups and groups. Oh, how's the Prophet? Oh, look, we've got bad news. What? Oh, your son's dead. I didn't ask you about my son. I asked you about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then another group came. She asked, where's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Said, look, we got bad news for you. Your husband's been killed. I didn't ask you about my husband. What happened to the Prophet of Allah alayhi wasallam? Another group came. How's the Prophet? Look, we got bad news. Your father's been killed. I didn't ask you about my father. I asked you about the Prophet. This is a true story. I'm not making this stuff up. It's in the hadith. Another group came. We just wanted to she's, where's the Prophet of Allah alayhi wasallam? How is he fine? Is he good? We got bad news. Your father's been killed. I didn't ask you about my father. I asked you about the Prophet of Allah ﷺ. And it's more poignant that it's a woman. Why? Because in those days, those times, there wasn't police forces and ambulances and shelters and all the things that women have today to support them, which, funnily enough, aren't enough. But there was even less than what there is now. So a woman that didn't have her son, her father, her husband, and her brother, what's she going to do in that society? She's a goner. Probably have to sell her body, really. Not in the prophetic society, but generally speaking. Yeah? Do we agree with that or not? In those days, where's her protection coming from? Where's her money coming from? She's going to struggle at least. She's going to struggle at least. That's why the example's even more poignant. What's she saying? I cannot rest. I can't find any ease until I see the Prophet of Allah and his face. That's love. That's love. And if we truly love the Prophet of Allah, we'll rectify our deeds. Because what's the hadith say? إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى من كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله ورسوله. Not just for Allah, even the intention. The hadith says that whoever's hijrah was for Allah and his Prophet, to please the Prophet. Because to please the Prophet is to please Allah. He is not Allah. There's no question. He's completely different to Allah. Allah's Allah. And he's in his own category. And there's nothing comparison, nothing in the similitude, nothing can be even slightly remotely related to Allah. Yet Allah has elevated the Prophet ﷺ. Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Prophet. Man ata'a Rasul faqad ata'a Allah. Whoever has obeyed the Prophet, this is in the Qur'an, has verily obeyed me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says.
قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله.
Right? So the verse as well, that if you love Allah Azza wa Jal, you claim to love Allah, then emulate the Prophet of Allah and Allah Azza wa Jal will love you. That's the reverse of what we're talking about. The love from Allah Azza wa Jal for us is when we emulate the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu. And so if we love someone, we want to make them happy, yeah? Or not? Yeah, alhamdulillah, a couple are nodding. Good. People are awake. That's good. Alright? What makes the Prophet of he's alive, alayhi salatu wasalam, in his soul, not his physical state. But his soul's there, alayhi salatu wasalam. Souls don't die. Except when Allah Azza wa Jal tells Israfil, blow the trumpet, then everything is gone, finished. But until that time, it's alive. Does anyone have any doubt about that? Souls are in their graves. They're just chilling, whatever they're doing in the first sky, depending if they're prophets. They're just doing what they're doing. Right?
Question. The people that say, "Oh, I saw a ghost," like, are they all?
Well, it could have been. The question is, if someone says, "I saw a ghost," it could be a jinn. In our faith, it could be a jinn. It could be a soul. It could be a righteous soul or otherwise. But generally, they're righteous souls. So we believe in spirits, if you like, because that's the jinn world.
But
And
aren't they all in their grave? Like,
so yeah.
hover around. Like, aren't they all in the grave though, technically?
So what's in the grave? So the question is, aren't they all in their grave? What's in the grave? Yeah.
So the soul can still just.
What's the soul made out of? So the answer was, what's in the grave is the body. What's the soul made out of? What's the body made out of? Dirt, basically, and the components of dirt. Yeah, and it goes back in the ground because that's what it came from. What about the soul? Where's the soul made of? يسألونك عن الروح قل هو من أمر ربي. No one knows. It's just the order of Allah. So Allah orders what He does. Of course, we have in our faith, it's clear that the souls, they go al-arwah. What does He say? Alayhi salatu wasalam, junud mujannada. The souls, the hadith, the souls are like soldiers that soldier. What does a soldier do when they soldier? They sit in the same spot. They go. They do their thing. Right? So that's what the souls do. It could be your mum, you see in a dream, whatever it could be. Could be, maybe not, but if you see the Prophet, it's definitely the Prophet of Allah. No doubt about that. The shaitan can't copy him. Ask if you need to ask, because they're good questions.
No, I was just wondering, like, no, because people say, "Oh, my mum passed away recently. I thought I saw her in my kitchen," or something like that. But I was thinking,
yeah, it could
in
be.
the
Yeah.
afterlife, they say that you have a grave, and whether you're good or not so good, it depends on how wide it is. So I just assumed that your soul stays in that grave.
Depending on the person. So the question was, the soul stays in the grave, depending on the person. Because remember when the Prophet ﷺ went Isra wal Mi'raj, what did he see in each sky? The different prophets, right? So those special ones, Allah, they can do whatever they want. And so someone says that they saw their mother in the kitchen. It could be the mum, the soul. It could be a qareen. Could be a jinn, because the jinns, they take the form of those people. So it could be either, like we said. That's the ghost. We believe in those things. We have no problem with the occult and the, what do they call it? Parallel universes, supernatural. That's part of our faith. Like, that's normal. It's in the Qur'an, Surah al-Jinn. Like, we're not scared of that stuff. We say, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." If it's a qareen, read Ayatul Kursi, they'll go. If it's a salih, they'll stay. People see it normally. People see it in their dreams. People see it between waking and dream state. Adi for us. That's normal. That's nothing to get us upset or to make us scared. So the Prophet ﷺ, his soul is there. And the hadith says that every time someone sends salat on the Prophet ﷺ, what happens? Allah puts his soul back in his body and he returns salams. How many billion Muslims are giving? Someone's got to be giving salam somewhere. It's got to be the case. So there's a billion Muslims on earth. Someone's doing it. There's more than a billion, nearly 2 billion. Work it out. If every one of them made salawat once a day, do the statistics. Would that cover every second? I'm sure it would. I'm not good at maths, but I'm sure it'd be 1 million every second or something like that. Whatever it is. But it is. So that means his soul's there. So we love the Prophet. Do we want to make him happy? What makes him happy? Good doing. Exactly right. Because what happens When do our deeds get shown to the Prophet of Allah salam? Right, every week, Mondays and Thursdays. That's why we fast those days, so that we can have our deeds accounted for. It's the hadith. How can his soul not be there? If that's what's going on in the next world, whatever you want to call it, the barzakh, whatever it's called, the next, the transitory world, whatever they call it, whatever the name that everyone calls it. So, if we truly love the Prophet ﷺ, then our lives will change. If we truly love the Prophet ﷺ, we'll emulate him. Why? That's what makes him happy. And we're claiming we love him. We're claiming we love him. Right? What does the hadith say? Umar al-Mardano comes up to the Prophet ﷺ, we always say it. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than my children, my, except myself. He says, whoa, Amr. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't love me more than you love yourself? And then he goes and he has to think about it, Sayyidina Umar, and he comes back and says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you even more than myself. He says, Al-ana ya Umar. Now you've got proper iman. Al-an. Now. Our iman is not complete unless we love for the Prophet. La yu'minu ahadukum hatta yuhibba li akhihi ma yuhibba li nafsi. Now the hadith that our iman is not complete until we love for our brother or sister that which we love for ourselves. Love. That we love. So in reality, that's the essence of our faith. Not this terrorism, killing people, Khalifa, or Sharia, implementing Sharia. We don't deny that it's something that we all love. We wouldn't love to live in a place where Sharia is implemented, of course. But that's not the main focus of our lives. The main focus of our lives is to love Allah Azza wa Jal and love the Prophet of Allah. And if I do that, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, and 1 million does that, and 10 million does that, and 100 million does that, and 1,000 million, which is 1 billion, does that, and 1.8 billion, you tell me the Sharia won't be there? Because that's what loving Billah is, isn't it? Isn't that what loving Billah is? Bijalali? Isn't that what it is? To love for the sake of Allah? Well, how can we love for the sake of Allah if the deen of Allah isn't manifest on earth? So if we love truly for each other, and we truly love Allah, and we truly love the Prophet, don't worry, Allah will bring all these things. You don't have to worry about that. Because what the people want, the people get. The power of the people, even in Islam. So this other way, never in the history of our faith has warfare and force ever established anything. It's the opposite. Every time that a party or a group of people came and said, oh, these guys are wrong, this group is wrong, the rulers are wrong, let's get rid of them and we'll put ourselves in there, we'll put someone else in there, that's always led to more corruption. It's always led to more destruction. It's led to more hatred. It's led to more enmity. It's led to greater weakness. And then we look at ourselves now. Now we're even much more weaker than we were. Why? Because we're just individuals. Well, I know everything. I don't need no one. I don't need to be friends with no one. I don't need to follow anyone. I don't need to be part of anything. Because I'm a Muslim and I've got Google and I've got a smartphone, so I must be smart. That's what we think because that's what we're told. That love that's the major bond. That's the major bond between the servant and Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the major bond between the follower and the leader, the Imam alayhi afdal salatu wa taslim, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wa salam. That's the bond between human beings. Ins is called what? Ins. Why are we called insan? Ins. From the word uns, which means to al-uns is to it's like intimacy and affection, right? So it has that connotation of love. That's what makes us human beings. If we only love the dollar, then we're not human beings. We're not human beings anymore. It's this. Khalas, we've become other than human beings. What are we like? Hum kal an'am, bal hum adal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He knows all these things. He says they're like animals. Oh, wait a sec. No, actually, they're more misguided. Why? Because an animal, cow, what's a cow supposed to do? What's a cow's job? What? Eat what? Is there any cow? Have you ever seen a cow flying a plane? Have you ever seen a cow doing mathematical equations? Have you ever seen a cow killing a frog purposefully? They don't do that. So that's why they're better than those people that don't love, that have no love. Because those people that have that, they're not even on their purpose, which is to be a human being, which is to love. But the cow, it's eating grass, it's making manure, right? It's producing milk, And then if it's that kind of cow, at the end, someone will eat it or something will eat it, or it will die and go back into what? The dirt, and the cycle of life continues. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're more misguided than the animals. The people who don't love. The people who don't know Allah. The people who don't love the Prophet of Allah. People who don't love for each other. So any questions about that? Come on, you've got to have questions about love. Come on. Unless you're like masters. So next week we'll do intention 8 and 9 because 8 is just really short.
Would you say 8 is like connected to the 7?
Yeah, it is connected to the one we just did now. Should we do it then? This is one line. Khalas, leave it to next week so you can be prepared, because I know that it's really hard to do the revision, so it might take you a long time to read that one line. But the people who read, the people who revise, they're the people who will go forward, inshallah. So any questions about that or anything else? No questions? Alright, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam ala khayr al-anam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Ya rahman ar-rahimin, arhamna bi rahmatika al-wasi'a wa yassir umurna bil hayat. وبعد الممات نسألك يا رحمن الراحمين تجعلنا متحابين لبعضنا البعض ونحب، واجعلنا محبوبا عندك يا رحمن الراحمين وعند نبيك عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم، واجعلنا قرة عين نبيك، واجعل مشايخنا قرة عين نبيك، واجعلنا نحن قرة عين مشايخنا يا أرحم الراحمين. نسألك أن تجعلنا قبل أن نقوم من مقاعدنا وقبل أن نخرج من هذه الغرفة وقبل أن نعود إلى بيوتنا أن تجعلنا محبوبين عندك، وأن تكون أحب شيء إلينا، وأن يكون النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم أحب إلينا من أنفسنا يا أكرم الأكرمين. نسألك ونترجاك ونبتهل إليك يا أرحم الراحمين. نسألك أن تجعلنا يا أرحم الراحمين مقربين إليك، وأن تكون أحب شيء إلينا، وأن يكون النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أحب إلينا من أنفسنا. نسألك يا أرحم الراحمين أن تكون أحب شيء إلينا، ويكون النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أحب إلينا من أنفسنا يا أكرم الأكرمين. نسألك يا أرحم الراحمين بقلوب صادقة، قلوب محروقة على أحوال المؤمنين وعلى أحوال المسلمين وعلى أحوال الخلق أجمع يا أرحم الراحمين، أن ترزقنا هذه المحبة، وأن يا أرحم الراحمين أن تسير المحبة بين المؤمنين وبين المسلمين وبين الخلق أجمع يا أرحم الراحمين. يا أرحم الراحمين نسألك أن تخرج من قلوبنا أي غل وأي بغض وأي كره لأي مخلوق يا أرحم الراحمين، وتقذف في قلوبنا رجاءك حتى نحبك كما ينبغي، وحتى نكون محبوبين عند النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم، وحتى يكون عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم أحب إلينا من أنفسنا. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us of those who love you, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, and have no other love in their heart except for you and except for the Prophet Muhammad alayhi Abdul Salatu Wassalam. We ask you, Ya Allah, that before we leave this gathering, Ya Allah, before we rise from our seats and before we return to our homes, that indeed we love the Prophet of Allah alayhi Salatu Wassalam more than we love ourselves. And we ask you, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, to spread and imbue between the hearts of the Muslims and the hearts of the believers love, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, that true love that we learn about today, and the true love that we heard about when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and also to the non-believers. Ya Allah, we ask you, Ya Allah, to grant us and to give us that rahmah, that empathy and that sympathy that the Prophet of Allah sallam was sent with to alameen, Ya Allah, to all except you, Ya Allah. And we ask you, Ya Allah, to give us the reality of that bi khairin wa lutfin wa afiyah wa la hadratin nabi bi sirril fatiha.